there have been men come into the country and buy a little range who feel that they want to be a cowboy. It takes someone with a lot of, should we call it guts? When I was a boy, most of our horses were range raised. Didn't have any particular special breeding that we know today. Many of our saddle horses were these old wild Mustangs that were so plentiful on the range that some of them were the best horses I've ever ridden, and some of them you just never could break them. They always remembered their old wild ways, and they never could overcome it. Most of the ranchers are breeding quarter horses, which are naturally adapted to work with cattle. They're tough, they're sure-footed, and they're alert, and they take to working cattle real well. It takes several years to make a real good cow horse. A lot of experience, a lot of training, a lot of patience, and a lot of know-how in handling a horse to make a good cow horse out of him. Now, some horses are better qualified to naturally adapted to be a roping horse than others, and then you might find another horse that's adapted to be a cutting horse. And we watch for these natural characteristics in the horse and train him for this particular thing that he's best adapted to do. We save our best horses for kraal work, such as roping when we're branding and cutting cattle, when we're selling and so forth.
When you go out on the roundup, you look for a variety of things. You check your range very closely for what it's cost you over the winter to run your cattle there if you're gathering up in the spring. Then you have to watch very close that you don't drive a cow away from a calf. You may see a cow off here somewhere, and you've got to be absolutely certain that you don't bring that cow away without her calf if you're bringing them up to brand and to move off the range to a summer range. So any cowboy can tell if a cow is being sucked. And if she's got a fresh bag and it shows that she's got a calf somewhere, why, she might fool you around for half a day and won't go to it. But you just have to wait until she does get it or just find it, and that's very hard to do. And another thing a cow will do, they'll leave a cow to babysit. There might be 4 or 5 cows with their calves way off here several miles from the water. But they'll leave one cow there with this bunch of calves, and the rest will go into water and then feed back. And that night this cow, the state will go into water. And it's amazing to a lot of people. This cow might leave this calf down there 5 miles, and she'll come in and get her drink and feed back, but she'll go right straight back to that calf. She knows exactly where she left it.
It used to be that we'd round up our cattle around a water hole like this, and we'd have enough cowboys that we'd just hold the cattle right here, and we'd put a couple of fellows, the best ropers, in the herd to rope the calves and drag them out to the branding fire. But now we've gone a little more modern. We'll drive our cattle down to a kraal. to do the branding because we just don't have that much help, and it makes a lot easier job of it to put them in the crib. I remember when I was a boy and I first began to ride this range, there were no fences. It was hard for the old-time cowmen to think that they could run cattle any other way than on the open range. However, came a time when there was so much competition for grass and forage and water between the cattle and the sheep and the wild horses that the government decided they were going to have to take a stand on this thing and do something about abusing the range the way some of it was being abused at that time. So the Taylor Bill came into effect, and the range was divided into individual allotments. The man had to fence his allotment and keep his cattle right there, and in that particular area, many of the cattlemen felt that they were going completely out of business. This just wouldn't work. And now they just couldn't understand how it would be possible to hold their cattle right in one particular area. But there were good things about this. Of course, we didn't like the fences, but as we were forced to go this way, we found that there were many advantages because a man then could run the kind of cattle he wanted. He could work them the way he wanted to work them, and without competition from someone else. And however, it's a little hard for some of us to have to accept the fact that there are fellows in working out of the BLM offices that have a college education without practical experience, and it's hard for us to accept them trying to tell us how we can run our cattle. We who have been raised on this range, spent our lifetime here, feel that we have our ideas that are hard to change, and we feel that we have got along real well. This is the big complaint that we have. But most everyone now is pretty well satisfied with things as they are, and take it as a whole, I can see that there's quite an improvement in forage conditions and range conditions. Many of us don't run as many cattle as we used to, but we run a better quality cattle, and we're raising heavier calves. We're actually selling more pounds of beef than we were when we had more cattle, and they weren't good of quality, and they didn't get as heavy as they do now.
Well, what's happened, the older men have about all died off since the Taylor Act has come in, or gone out of business. Now, I went out of business a year ago because I had no boys to follow in my tracks. Most of the people that are in the cow business now are boys that inherited from their parents, and they inherited again from their grandparents. And back to the front end of it, around in this end of the country, a good share of the cattle was started from the Mormon herd of cattle that was raised here to pipe and here on the desert. Properly run, these younger people could have a lot better cow life than they're going to have the way it's being run. So these young people have to go have a job on the side, and they punch cows Saturday and Sunday, and they work too fast, and then they got to get back to their job on Monday. And they either ought to have enough cattle to give them a full-time job, or they shouldn't have any cattle. But then the grazing service comes along, and I have a winter range set up for 132 cows. They cut me down to 53. Well, you can't run 53 cows because that's not a living. So I just sold out to another man that had a little bigger unit than I did. I didn't have any kids that wanted mine, so I sold out to a man that made his operation enough bigger so he could afford to stay in business. It's the cook's duty to do all the cooking for no matter how many men you got, and to move your outfit. The range boss or the ride boss will say, now we're going to have dinner over the pipe. So as soon as he can gather up all his stuff from breakfast, well, then he hitches up and in his funky, and sometimes they have 2 wagons, sometimes only 1. Throw all the beds on and close their chuck wagon box and put their cooking tools in the wagon, and they'll go on over the pipe. They might be there 2-3 hours before the cowboys get in, but they'll have all this time to get a good dinner ready for them. One thing that makes a difference is you would never see a package of Bisquick in an old-time cow outfit. Then for this many people, you'd have at least 2 big bread ovens. Have a full trench clear along under that line and a tripod hanging over it. To have different sets of pots, and have coals for your Dutch ovens. He's going to put that Dutch oven there now and put a lot of coal underneath and a lot on top. And with this breeze blowing, if you don't put some sand up around the bottom so it don't blow under it, he'll burn them on the bottom. But maybe he knows that. I suppose he does. But there'd be a real big deeper oven. Of course, he's got a roast in. We never used to cook meat in a roast in an oven. We'd roast it by running a rod through it and hold it by the coals and just spin it around, let it slowly cook from the coals. And you'd use a big oven just for frying meat. Of course, it didn't take much to fry that meat because we wouldn't eat anything with second yearling heifers. It was good and fat. Meat was tender, juicy, nice to cook. But this is quite an authentic old cupboard they've got here, this mess wagon. That's pretty good for these times. Carried dry beans, mainly them little white navy beans. And then we carried all kinds of dried fruit and rice with the raisins. We used lots of rice with the raisins. You'd never have this lumber to make your coals out of because it just doesn't make too good a coal, or it doesn't last long enough. Oaks or pinon, pine make the best coals. But that's pretty authentic, the way he's working there. This is all that canned vegetables and what have you, that's pretty modern. We started using canned goods, maybe 25 years ago. But the other thing was, you see, most of this desert range could be used pretty well with a wagon. But all the mountain range had to be used with pack outfits. When you use a pack outfit, you're very limited as to what you can take. And most of our ranges was pack outfit ranges. In fact, a lot of the desert was. We never had pies and cakes. We just had sorghum. We used to call it lick. That's sorghum made out of cane, you know. And then honey, we'd have lots of honey. And just dip our old biscuits in the beef grease and put sorghum on it or honey. It made a pretty good dessert. Well, I thought I wanted to be a wild cowboy and learn how to rope and to ride. I thought I wanted to kill wild Indians and hang their scalps by my side. I thought I wanted to eat my meat raw and carry my pistols by twos. I never once thought I'd get homesick and down to them chuck wagon blues. But now I want to go home to my daddy, and I long to see my old ma. I want to tell my big sister that I ain't going to be no outlaw. I want to trade these high heel boots off for a pair of